Uh, okay. Sriji, can you share that PPT?
Okay, okay. Okay, okay. Autonomous PPT.
Hello. Good afternoon. I hope I'm audible to everybody. Uh, Good. Hello. Yes, I think now things will be in order. I hope I'm audible to everybody and you will be able to see the PPT on screen also. Can somebody confirm?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Today's topic is marine insurance. And due to paucity of time, we are just focusing on marine cargo insurance for today. The topics we'll be covering today are introduction to marine cargo insurance, uh, organizations, principles of marine insurance. Just a minute. Hello. Hello. I'll start again. The topics we are going to be covering today is introduction to marine cargo insurance, the organization related to marine cargo insurance, some principles of marine insurance underwriting, some Incoterms, the modes of transit, types of packing, types of coverages, some types of marine cargo policies and marine cargo claims. I'll just start by introducing myself. My name is Tobin Mammen. I am assistant manager and I am part of technical department at Coimbatore. Even though my expertise in this subject is limited, however, I have been always fascinated one person, another person. What happens is across time, uh, the insurable interest changes hands from the seller to the buyer at various points of time. So only if the buyer or a seller has insurable interest in the subject matter of insurance, that can be covered under marine cargo insurance. Another thing is we are covering the goods which are in transit. And when we are talking about transit, we are talking about the physical transfer of goods from one place to another. Goods will either be in motion or in or stationary, or they will be stored at some place. However, it should be in course of transit. What we mean by in course of transit is it is going from one place to another place. It has a starting point and an ending point in mind, and uh, it is undertaking all steps to reach the final destination. So there are some historical forms of marine insurance that we have seen. In the Manu Smriti, there is a mention of Yoga Shema, and there was a concept called Jokami Handi. These handis were purchased by the insurer when the goods were dispatched. And if the goods were arrived safely, the insurer got the premium along with the money for the handi. So essentially what happened was when the goods were dispatched, the insurer would give the money and buy the handi. Handi is a contract. And when the goods arrived, they will get back the money along with the premium and hand back the handi. In the Yangtze River, people used to distribute cargo on different boats. And as far as Hammurabi's code is concerned, suppose the goods which were in transit did not arrive, all debts that were taken on those goods were waived off. The Rhodian merchants had the practice of bottomry for vessel and respondentia for cargo. And the Rhodian merchants were also the first to start the GA practice. And after that, eventually, the Italian merchants started this procedure of underwriting marine insurance contracts. And that slowly spread to Lloyd's of London.
भेज दी उसने
And Marine Insurance Act of 1906, on which the insurance practice, at least in the Commonwealth nations and in India, is based on. Till 31st of March 1994, this marine cargo insurance was governed by the All India Marine Cargo Tariff. After that, this tariff was abolished. However, we are using the wordings as far as the which are used in the international market. So there are some peculiarities with relation to marine cargo insurance. Number one is that the proposal form is not compulsory. So an intimation can be given to the insurer either in writing or verbally, which has, if it is given verbally, it has to be noted down by the insurer, and based on which they can issue the marine insurance policy. Another peculiarity of the marine insurance, marine cargo insurance, is that there are no arbitrators. Generally, almost all lines of business dealing with property damage will have an arbitration clause However, you will notice that there is no arbitration clause in marine cargo insurance. Another peculiar factor about marine cargo insurance is that it is not a pure indemnity, but it is only a reasonable indemnity which is achieved in marine cargo insurance. You will notice that the marine cargo insurance is almost always done on an agreed value basis, where the insurer and the insured will agree on what is the value of the cargo, and they will fix it as the sum insured. Once that is agreed, even though there is a fluctuation in the value of the cargo at the time of loss, the agreement is that the loss payable will be as per the sum insured only. Another peculiarity of the marine cargo insurance is that it is of an international character, and since there are shipments involved which go to various countries, there needs to be an underlying understanding between the various parties as to how coverages will operate and what are the procedures that are taking place. Another peculiarity of marine cargo insurance is the principle of abandonment. This principle of abandonment is not available generally in other lines of business. This is peculiar to marine cargo insurance. We'll see later what abandonment is. Just keep in mind that the principle of abandonment is peculiar to marine cargo insurance. Another peculiarity of marine cargo insurance is the practice of general average, which generally is not seen in any other form of business. General average essentially is that whenever a journey is taking place, a voyage is taking place, people who want the voyage to be completed, there are many people who want the voyage to be completed. For example, the owner of the ship wants the voyage to be completed. The person who has cargo on the ship, they want the voyage to be completed. So only if the voyage is completed, they'll be able to sell their goods. Similarly, there are people who have collected freight, who want the voyage to be completed. So generally, the vessel interests, the cargo interests, and the freight interests, they all want the voyage to be completed. So there are some circumstances in which the voyage will face some sort of difficulty in getting or in progressing. So at that time, there are some voluntary expenses which have to be incurred so that the voyage is completed. And those expenses, what are voluntarily incurred, will be shared among the three interests. That is the vessel interest, the cargo interest, and the freight interest. So that is essentially the concept of general average, and that is a peculiarity of marine insurance. There are some organizations associated with marine cargo insurance. The number one organization is GIC Re. Of GIC Re is that they are taking compulsory cession of 5% on each and every policy. Other than that, GIC Re is also managing the marine hull pool. There are no separate admiralty courts in India, and there are no PNI clubs in India. That you have to take note. Then an important organization with respect to marine insurance is Lloyd's. The Lloyd's is an organization which is comprised of members who will collect, who will pay subscription, and from this subscription, the administrative costs of Lloyd's will be met. Lloyd's has a council which is comprised of 28 members who have to give a means test, and they also have to give a deposit. There are brokers who place business with Lloyd's, and there is a third-party organization which facilitates this. The short form for it is exchange XIS. this exchanging insurance services, and XCS, exchanging claim services. Other than that, Lloyd's brings out various publications like Lloyd's Shipping Register, Lloyd's Shipping Index, and all these things. Other than that, Lloyd's supplies lots of forms which can be used for the transaction of marine insurance business. There are also Lloyd's agents who keep track of where ships are, if any ships have been damaged, if any general average has been declared. All this, these Lloyd's agents will monitor. Another organization is IUA, International Underwriting Association. International Underwriting Association is the world's largest organization dealing with marine cargo. It was formed by the merger of LIRMA, London International and Reinsurance Market Association, and ILU, Institute of London Underwriters. Is this Institute of London Underwriters, ILU, which gave the old institute clauses. And when I say old institute clauses, I am referring to the institute cargo clauses of 1982. Then IUA and Lloyd's together, they have formulated the new institute clauses. When I'm talking about the new institute clauses, I am talking about institute cargo clauses 2009. Then there is a International Maritime Bureau. It deals with the crimes and frauds and malpractices related to marine insurance. Other than that, they also provide authentication services for trade finance documentation, and they take activities to ensure suppression of piracy. We also have another forum called IUMI, International Union of Marine Insurance. This forum is an forum for exchange of expertise, information, and statistical data. It is not a decision-making body, and it is not involved in the formulation of any rating and schedules. But people from various insurance companies come together in this forum to discuss about various facets which might affect their business. Other than that, we have the Tariff Advisory Committee. It was the Tariff Advisory Committee which came out with the All India Marine Cargo Tariff. Other than that, they were also the people who came up with the inland transit clauses. Then we have the General Insurance Council, comprised of all the people underwriting non-life insurance business. This General Insurance Council was instrumental in formulating the new inland transit clauses. Other than that, if people who are familiar with the current market scenario, we have that 0.015% rate cap. The General Insurance Council was one of the backers of that step towards bringing some underwriting discipline. Now we'll go on to the principles of marine cargo insurance. So the first principle, as we always obviously know, is the utmost good faith. In Latin mentioned as uberrima fide. Sections 19 to 23 of the Marine Insurance Act of 1963. The Marine Insurance Act of 1963 is the Indian Act, which is based on the UK Act, Marine Insurance Act of 1906. So it says that the insured and the insurer have the responsibility of informing each other of the material circumstances. However, we have to understand what we mean by material circumstances. As far as the insured is concerned, material circumstances are those things which will affect the judgment of a prudent underwriter, and it will affect the judgment in such a way that he will be able to take two decisions. The first decision is whether he will accept or refuse the risk, and the second decision is whether what is the premium, what is the terms, what are the conditions of insurance that has to be attached. If anything of that sort is there, any such circumstance is there, that has to be declared. As far as material circumstances are concerned, some material circumstances need not be disclosed to the insurer. Those things are those circumstances which diminish the risk, and any circumstances which is known or presumed to be known by the insurer. Any information that is waived by the insurer, and any information, let us say you have inserted some warranty which says that you are not supposed to do things. So if such a warranty is there, then that information need not be declared. Any questions of law and any facts of common knowledge, all these need not be declared to the insurer. With respect to utmost good faith, there is a concept called representation. A representation is either verbal or written, and it can be a fact or an expectation. The facts have to be substantially correct. Need not be 100% correct, but substantially correct. And expectations, they have to be made in good faith. What I mean to say is, let us say, if the insured is saying that the goods have been packed in a waterproof container, the container need not be 100% waterproof. It has to be substantially true. It is designed to be waterproof, but sometimes what happens, some amount of water can go in. However, that's a fact that it was covered by a waterproof container. That's what we mean by the facts have to be substantially true. As far as the expectations are concerned, expectation is, suppose they expect the cargo to leave on 21st of April. If it was made in good faith and the cargo leaves in on 22nd of April or 23rd of April, then that is okay. So that is essentially the principle of utmost good faith, and we'll move on to the next one. With respect to principle of utmost good faith, we have a connected thing called warranties. Section 35 to 43 of the Marine Insurance Act deals with these warranties. These warranties can either be express or implied. When I say express, it means that it appears on the face of the policy. Either it appears on it is printed in the face of the policy, or a reference to it is made in the policy. For example, private carrier's warranty. We can either type down the whole private carrier's warranty on the policy document, or what we can do is we can say private carrier warranty applies. So either it will be appearing on the face of the policy, or a reference of it is made on the face of the policy. In that case, that becomes an express warranty. Another type of warranty is an implied warranty. It is not there on the face of the policy. However, even if it is not there on the face of the policy, it is deemed to be there. There are two implied warranties in marine cargo insurance. One is seaworthiness of vessel, and the second one is legality of adventure. When we mean seaworthiness of vessel, what we mean is the vessel should be capable of navigating through the danger waters of the sea to its destination. It should not. It is not sufficient that the vessel travels. It should be in a seaworthy condition to carry the cargo also. The point to be noted is that there is no implied warranty for seaworthiness of cargo. The vessel should be seaworthy. The cargo should not be seaworthy. The point to be noted here is that in ICC, Institute Cargo Clauses 2009, this implied warranty regarding seaworthiness of vessel is relaxed to some extent. That you can see later when we are studying the Institute Cargo. The second implied warranty is the legality of adventure. That means that whatever goods we are transiting is, it should be falling within the purview of the law. No illegal things like smuggling or without paying the uh, selling of contraband goods. All this should not be taking place. So these are the two implied warranties. The theoretical aspect about warranties is that if it is asked in the question paper, we have to mention that warranties must be complied with whether they are material or not. What makes it different from a condition is conditions have to be makes the policy voidable only if they are material to the laws. Warranties, breach of warranty, even if it is not material, will make the policy voidable. So this is an important point. Now we will move on to the next principle of marine insurance. It is dealing with insurable interest. It is mentioned in section 6 to 17 of the Marine Insurance Act. So what it mentioned is that the insured must have a reasonable expectation of acquiring interest when the policy is issued. Unlike in fire insurance, where the insurable interest should be there at the time of taking the policy, throughout the currency of the policy, and at the time of loss. In marine cargo insurance, that is not there. However, at the time of taking the policy, the insured should have a reasonable expectation of acquiring that interest. So, for example, if I am the buyer and you are the seller, I am expecting that eventually I will acquire interest in this cargo. So at that time, I can take a policy with the expectation of acquiring the interest. It is important that there should be insurable interest at the time of loss. And once there is a loss, the insured cannot acquire the interest voluntarily after he is aware of the loss. So, even though a marine cargo policy is freely assignable, the assignment of the policy should take place prior to the loss. No, that's also not true. The assignment can take place after the loss also. Even though the marine insurance policy is freely assignable, once the insured has lost his insurable interest, they cannot take it back. That is what the meaning of the sentence is. Then in marine insurance, we have a concept called defeasible interest and contingent interest. So defeasible interest, what defeasible interest is you will see later, we will talk about Incoterms. You will notice that in different terms, the insurable interest of the cargo will change from the hands of the seller to the hands of the buyer at different points of time. So if it is happening during the currency of the insurance, by some other automatic change of interest is happening by any event other than the maritime perils, that is known as a defeasible interest. Contingent interest is it attaches during the voyage due to some contingency. An example of a defeasible interest will be, let us say a consignment is sold on CIF Incoterm. So at the once the cargo is loaded onto the ship at the port of loading, the insurable interest changes from the seller to the buyer. So it is an event. Loading onto the ship is an event. It's not an event which is a maritime peril, but the occurring of that event has caused the insurable interest to change from the buyer, from the seller to the buyer. An example of contingent interest is, for example, good is sold on FOB basis. FOB basis means once the cargo is loaded onto the ship, the insurable interest of the seller ceases and the insurable interest is shifted to the buyer. But what happens is the buyer, during the course of the transit, the buyer notices that there is some marriage has operated and he does not want to take the delivery of the goods. In such a contingency, it's a special case. Contingency means a special case. In such a contingency, the insurable interest of the cargo shifts back to the seller. This is due to the happening of a contingency. This is a contingent interest. Or the change in insurable interest has happened due to a contingency. The definitions will be made clear to you. There are two types of contingent interest policies. One is the buyer contingency policy and the seller contingency policy. Buyer's contingency policy, seller's contingency policy will be given to the seller. And when it is done on FOB, due to the operation of some sort of contingency, back to the seller.
1 minute.
Seller's contingency policy.
When others, please mute your mic. Please don't disturb. Thanks, Tobin.
As far as the buyer's contingency policy is concerned, we are giving the buyer's contingency policy to people located in India who have payment on JF basis, where the seller was supposed to arrange for insurance. However, there is some reason due to which either the seller was not able to arrange insurance or he was not able to arrange the sufficient amount of insurance. In such a case, the buyer's contingent interest will kick in and we will be able to pay the losses. Another aspect is the insurer of marine cargo insurance has the insurable interest in the cargo risk which he has accepted. That is why he is able to reinsure it with the reinsurer. Another thing is that freight can be insured in marine cargo insurance also. If freight has been paid in advance or on lost or not lost basis. So, for example, if I am the carrier, I am telling you that I will take your goods to, let us say, your destination. But even if the goods reach or not reach, you have to pay me the freight. That is known as a lost or not lost. Another way of doing it is the freight can be paid in advance. In such a case, the cargo interest can take has the insurable interest in freight also, either if it is paid in advance or if it is insured on lost or not lost basis. Section 52 and 53 of the Marine Insurance Act deals with the assignment of interest. So we have to know that the marine policy is freely assignable. However, if in the policy there is some express term that says that it should not be assigned, then it cannot be assigned. So normally the marine insurance policy is freely assignable. However, in the policy, if it is mentioned that this policy cannot be assigned, then it cannot be assigned. Second point is, if at the time of transfer of interest, there is no express or implied agreement to assign the policy, then the cover would terminate immediately. What it means is that if there is a sale happening, if the if the seller is selling the cargo to a buyer and there is no agreement between them that I will assign my policy to you once I sell it to you. Then whatever policy we have issued to them will terminate immediately, even if it is in the course of transit. You can just compare it with the motor policy or a fire policy. In a motor policy, once there is a sale of the car, what happens is we have a certain amount of days within which that has to be endorsed in the policy for the coverage to continue. In a fire policy, once there is a transfer of interest, once there is a goods sale of the goods, immediately there is a stoppage of coverage. Similarly, in marine insurance, there is a stoppage of coverage. Only if there is a pre-agreed agreement between the seller and buyer that there will be an assignment of the policy, only then this marine insurance policy will continue. An example would be if there is a sale on CIF or CIP terms. So the marine insurance policy will be taken by the seller. But even after the sale happens, after the insurable interest transferred at the ship, at the port of loading, cover continues because there was an agreement between the buyer and the seller prior to the transfer of interest taking place. The third point is that duty and increased value insurance policies cannot be assigned. Seller's contingency policy can only be assigned to the bankers. So this is the things with relation to the assignment of marine insurance policy. With regard to indemnity, as mentioned earlier, marine insurance policies normally can be on valued or unvalued basis. However, marine cargo insurance is almost always, there are some exceptions, but almost always on agreed value basis. What we mean by agreed value basis is the insurer and the insured will agree on the value of the consignment or the goods prior to the issuance of the policy. And once it is agreed, that will be the basis for all partial and total loss claims. Customarily, generally we are issuing policies on CIF value plus an agreed percentage. The CIF, it has two meanings. CIF, the Incoterm meaning is cost, insurance and freight. It is an Incoterm. As far as the basis of valuation is, it means that the prime cost of the goods, other than that, we will add the insurance money. Other than that, we will add the freight money. Other than that, we will agree to a percentage. Generally, that percentage is 10%. CIF plus 10%. Normally, whatever is the invoice value, we will load it by 10% and settle these or agree to such values. Custom duty policy is an example of an unvalued policy where it is not on agreed value. In the customs duty policy, what we are doing is we are mentioning a limit. We don't know what is the value of the custom duty that is going to be. However, we can estimate it to be a limit. Suppose there is a damage, we will estimate the customs duty on actuals. If the actuals is less than the limit, we will pay the actual. If the actuals is more than the limit, we will pay the limit. So this is a difference between custom duty policy and other marine cargo policy. So this is about indemnity in marine cargo policies and agreed value in marine cargo. Then the next point is about contribution. Section 34(2) of the Marine Insurance Act mentions that the insured has a right to claim under the policies in any order he may choose, but the insurer is liable only for his due proportion of the loss. What that means is that contribution clause will apply. If there is, say, a consignment which is insured for 1 crore and 2 crore respectively with two different insurers. So whatever is the loss will be split by the insurers in the ratio of 1:2. So contribution clause will be applied. However, the insured has a right to claim with insurer 1 first or insurer 2 first or insurer that is their wish. However, in case insurer 1 is settling the full claim, he can either recover it from insurer 2, or once insurer 2 is settling the claim to the insured, he can take it from the insured. So that is what contribution is about. What? Yes. So we'll move on to underinsurance. Generally, there is a perception that underinsurance is not applicable in agreed value policies. However, Section 81 of the Marine Insurance Act mentions that underinsurance is applicable on marine insurance policy. So, if the agreed value, whatever is the agreed value, is much lower compared to the actual value of the cargo, then underinsurance will apply for partial loss claims. As far as total loss claims are concerned, no matter what is happening, we will pay the agreed value only, even if underinsurance is applicable or not. So this is an important point to know. Now we'll move on to subrogation. So in marine insurance, subrogation will happen after the payment of the claim only. And insured is placed in the position of the insured to the extent of the rights and remedies. The point is rights and remedies only. And the recovery is not exceeding the amount that is paid. In case of total loss, they have a right to take over whatever remains of the subject matter. Now, the important point in subrogation is that in case we are settling a claim and tomorrow we are able to recover some amount, and that amount is more than the amount which we have settled the claim, then we have to pay whatever excess we have recovered back to the insured. Okay, you note this point. Another thing is only rights and remedies are transferred. No, nothing else is transferred. Now we will move on to the next principle. I had talked about it's a peculiarity of marine insurance. It's the principle of abandonment. Now, about abandonment is the transfer of rights, titles, interests, and property, including the liabilities, to the insurer. Earlier, only rights and remedies were transferred. In abandonment, everything is transferred, including ownership, including liabilities. In practice, however, insurers will reject abandonment. And once abandonment is accepted, we cannot reject it after that. You can understand this with a small example. Let us say there was a consignment going and one of the container falls near the port. Now this container is causing some trouble to the ships which are coming inside and outside the port. So the port authorities will claim some sort of compensation against the owner of the container or the cargo which is lost. If the insurer has, as per the principle of abandonment, accepted the full titles, interest and everything, the liabilities have to be paid by the insurer. So in such case, that is why insurers in practice will always stay away from abandonment. But this principle still exists. Another point of difference between abandonment and subrogation is that suppose we have settled the claim and we have taken the full value under abandonment. Suppose we are selling the cargo outside and we are able to get a higher amount than what we have paid. That amount belongs to the insurer only under abandonment. So that is another difference between abandonment and subrogation. Now we will talk about the principle of proximate cause. Proximate cause is the active, efficient cause which sets in motion a train of events that brings about the result without an intervention. So the keywords are active, efficient, and which brings about a result without intervention. So there should not be an intervention of any other causes. So section 55 of mentions that the underwriter must indemnify if the loss or damage is suffered by a peril, and loss or damage is suffered by the insured and it is proximately caused by a peril covered under the policy. And if the loss or damage is not proximately caused by an excluded peril. So as far as proximate cause is concerned, what the Marine Insurance Act is saying, it is saying that there should be an actual loss. Presumption of loss is not sufficient. Second thing is the loss should have been caused by a peril which is should have been proximately caused by a peril covered under the policy, and it should not be caused by an excluded peril. The important point to be noted is that under ICC B and ICC C, the doctrine of proximate cause is relaxed, where the words proximately caused will be replaced by the words reasonably attributable to the named perils. You will see that when we are studying the ICC B and ICC clauses. But just keep that in mind, that the doctrine of proximate cause is modified slightly in case of ICC B and ICC. Now, it is an important topic with relation to marine cargo insurance. It is the concept of Incoterms. Incoterms stands for International Commercial Terms. It is drafted by the International Chamber of Commerce in France. Thing about Incoterms is that it will determine when the insurable interest has been transferred and whose responsibility it is to take insurance. So, in case there is any dispute with the matter related to Incoterms, it is taken to court, and International Chamber of Commerce will not be interfered. There are multiple versions of Incoterms. Earlier, the versions were 2000. Then we shifted to 2010. Then we are shifting to 2020. Incoterms 2020, which came out last year. On 1st January 2020 is the latest version of the terms. There are 11 terms, and we'll go about them in detail in the next slide. While interpreting the Incoterms, it is important to understand the passing of the interest of the risk, passing of the risk, which relates to the movement of goods and affects the insurable interest as well. Incoterms will also help us understand who is responsible for taking the. The main change in the latest version compared to Incoterms 2020, it might be asked, is that a new DPU term has been introduced and DAT has been removed. DPU stands for delivery at place unloaded. The old delivery at terminal was replaced. So under Incoterms 2010, another change is there, is that in the old Incoterms 2010, both CIF and CIP was required. Insurance was as per ICC-C. Now, under the new Incoterms, CIP requires ICC-A, but CIF is still on ICC-C. So, the minimum insurance requirement, there is a change. In the new Incoterms, there is also a provision for the buyers and sellers to use their own means of transport. That clarity has been brought about by the Incoterms. Now this is a chart which shows the 11 Incoterms. This chart will help us understand the concept of Incoterms very well. Now, in the top portion, you will be able to see some diagram. You will see one factory at the extreme left corner and one warehouse on the extreme right corner. In between, one truck is there. Then there is one ship. Then there is another ship. In between, there is another truck. So you, from right to left, you will be seeing the seller's factory or seller's warehouse. Then we will have the carrier. Then we will have the port of loading. Then we will have the port of discharge. Then we will have the tail end risk. Then we will have the, in short, the buyer's warehouse. So these groups, you will notice that in the second line we have groups. It is mentioning either any mode of transport or sea and inland waterway transport. You will notice that out of the 11 Incoterms, only 4 Incoterms are specifically and exclusively used for sea and inland waterway transport. Those are the FAS, FOB, CFR, and CIF. FAS, FOB, CFR, and CIF are used exclusively for sea and inland waterways. The other 7 can be used for any mode of transport. Okay. The next point, we will just look at the full forms of each and every Incoterm. You will notice, I'm talking about row number 3. You will notice that EXW, it stands for X works. Next one, FCA, stands for free at carrier's place. Third one stands for FAS, stands for free alongside ship. The next word stands for FOB, it stands for free on board. Next is CFR. CFR stands for cost and freight. The next one is CPT. It stands for carriage paid to place. Next is CIP. Carriage and insurance paid. DAP. Delivered at place. Next is DPU. Delivered at place unloaded. And DDP. That is delivery duty paid. So once you are familiar with what the Incoterms names are and what their full form is, next we have to learn when the Incoterm transfer of risk is happening. You will notice that X works, I am talking about the 4th column in red. X works, the transfer of risk is happening at the buyer's disposal. It is very convenient for us to learn because it is just below the insured factor. So once goods are ready for delivery at the seller's factory, the risk is transferred to the buyer. Next is the carrier. The risk will be transferred once the goods are loaded onto the conveyance. Once the goods are loaded onto the conveyance, it becomes the buyer's risk.
Others, please mute your mic. Please don't disturb the class. Please mute your mic.
Now we will talk about FAS. FAS stands for free alongside ship. Where transfer of risk is happening in free alongside ship, it is happening when it is alongside the ship at the port of loading. When the goods are alongside the alongside the ship at the port of loading, then the transfer of risk takes place. Next, we have FOB or free on board. In FOB, when the transfer of risk takes place, it takes place when the risks, when the cargo is on board the vessel. So earlier we used to learn that when it used to cross the ship's rails. But as per Incoterms 2020, what it says is it is on board the ship. So if some consignment or cargo is damaged by loading onto the ship, it is still the seller's risk. But if it is damaged post loading onto the ship, on board the ship, then it is the buyer's risk. In CFR also, we are saying it is on board vessel. In CIF also, it is on board vessel. Now, in CPT, we will be in CPT, we will see that the risk is transferred at the carrier. It will be transferred to the carrier at the, I'll just clarify. It will actually they have meant it is similar to in CPT and CIF also. It is similar to what is there in FAS, FOB, CFR, and CAF. That is at the port of loading. But they have mentioned it as carrier, at carrier. The reason for that they have mentioned it as at carrier is that because CPT and CIP are used for any mode of transit, not only the inland waterways. So that's why they have mentioned it as at carrier. So when you are learning, we can just remember it as if carrier is involved, let us say if a vessel is involved, it will be on board the vessel. So it will be similar to what is there for FOB, but we are mentioning at carrier because it is there for any mode of transit. Similarly, in CIP also it is at carrier. So FOB, CFR, CIF, CPT, and CIP, they will all have similar points where there is a transfer of insurable interest from seller to buyer. As far as DAP is concerned, the insurable interest is changing at the final destination, at the named place. So delivery at place, DPU is delivery at place unloaded, and DDP is delivery duty paid. The difference between DAP, DPU, and DDP is that in DAP, only the delivery at place will take place. In DPU, in delivery at place, unloaded will take. They will do the unloading also. It is the seller's responsibility to unload also. In DDP, the seller will pay the customs duty also. Delivery duty paid. Now, in this, the important thing to be noted is that insurance column is there on the, I think, 9th column, insurance. Everything else will be mentioned negotiable. You will see that CIF and CIP only have seller's responsibility to arrange for insurance. So that is an important point to be noted. So if it is a seller's responsibility to arrange for insurance, what is the type of coverage that they need to arrange. So that is what we discussed earlier. In the Incoterms 2020 version, CIP should be on ICC-A basis and CIF should be on ICC-C basis. In the old one, in Incoterms 2010, both used to be on ICC-C basis. So just take a note of that. So that's the important point. I think Incoterms we have dealt with quite deeply. We'll move on to the next topic. Now we'll talk about the various modes of transit. We have different modes of transit. Everybody is familiar with this. Sea, road, rail, air. We have a concept called multimodal transportation where multiple modes of transports are there. And then we have post.
I have a doubt about with
Yeah.
regard to that previous slide. Oh, with regard to that negotiable, it says that under CIF and CIP, that you said that it is ICC-C cover will be given. But
No,
if
no. The latest version, ICC-C for CIF and ICC-A for CIP.
Okay, if the buyer requires ICC-A cover, then he has to pay the additional money for that.
That actually that will be maybe negotiated with the client, but this is I'm talking. This is the Incoterm as drafted by International Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
They have no obligation to take a wider coverage than ICC-C, but in practice we will not take all risk cover only.
Okay.
So we can give ICC-A, no problem.
Okay. Thank you.
But in the exam they will ask what is the minimum coverage only. So I'll just move on, no?
Yes.
Now we'll just have a look at the various types of packing. That's one is corrugated fiberboard boxes and cartons. The thing about this packing is that it is not suitable for sea voyages and pilferable products. Next is wooden boxes and cases. Next one is bags. Bags are susceptible to exposure to weather and tearing. Next is bales used for commodities like cotton and I cannot think of anything other than cotton and bales. Then we have pallets or
waste papers, tire fibers.
Yes. Okay. Then we have pallets. Pallets means multiple packages are loaded onto wooden crates to form a block, and this block is packed once again. The whole point of having pallets or units is that this making it easier to transport the boxes. Instead of transporting them one by one, let us say 1,000 boxes are there. Transporting the 1,000 boxes one by one. If we are making it making it into a pallet comprising of 1,000 boxes, we can lift it using a fork and make transportation easier. Then we have something called lift van. Lift van is essentially a van in which the chassis, the portion where the cargo is carried can be detached and it can be loaded onto any train or any other mode of conveyance as per the convenience of the postal authority. So these are the different types of packing. Other than that, we have a different kind of packing, bulk cargo, where the whole vessel or at least part of the vessel will be loaded with any sort of commodity. This commodity, there will not be individual units. There will be an aggregate total of the commodity. So this bulk cargo can be segregated into dry bulk or liquid bulk cargo. Then we have the concept of containers, containerization. These containers we have a concept called full container load and FCL. FCL stands for full container load and LCL. LCL stands for less than full container load. These containers are 8 or 8.5 feet high to 8 feet wide, and its length will vary from 10 feet to 20 feet or 30 feet or 40 feet. Now, the size of the container is measured in TEU. The full form of TEU is 20-foot container equivalent units. 20-foot container equivalent units. So I mentioned FCL and LCL. It has some bearing on marine insurance claims. The bearing it has is in FCL load, full container loads. Generally, what is the practice is the container will be brought to the seller's warehouse or seller's factory. There, the seller's employees will be loading the goods onto the container. Loading of the goods into the container is known as stuffing. So when goods are stuffed into the container by the insurance employees, if there is a deficiency of packing, then the claim will not be payable. That you will see in due course of time. But if it is an LCL load, it's a less than full container load, what happens is the stuffing will be done not by the insured or their employees. It will be done by forwarding agents or transporters. It will be done by other third parties. In such a case, if there is a deficiency of packing, then the claim will still be payable. That is the importance of FCL and LCL in marine cargo claims. There, another type of packing is over-dimensional cargo. Over-dimensional cargo, there are very many definitions, but you can just remember it as if it is not, it is going outside a normal container, or if it is going outside the limits of any normal vehicle, goods carrying vehicle, then it is known as an over-dimensional cargo. If it is more than 25 metric ton, it is known as over-dimensional cargo. If the height is more than 10 feet, 13 feet, then it is over-dimensional cargo. So the definition of over-dimensional cargo is not very clear, but generally this is the normal definitions which are taken. Now we are talking about the different types of coverages associated with the marine cargo insurance. So we'll start with the institute cargo clauses. Now we have to note that these are drafted. I'm talking about the 2009. The latest clauses are ICC 2009 clauses. These have been drafted by IUA. We saw what IUA is. And Lloyd's. The old clauses were done by ILU. So we'll be discussing about ICC 2009 clauses only. So you will notice that the institute cargo clauses, there are total 6 clauses. So ICC A, ICC B, ICC C, there is a 2009 version and an 82 version for each of them. So total 6 versions are. But I think most questions will come from the 2009 clauses. You just have to have a basic understanding of what are the differences between 1982 and 2009 clause. The most material differences I will just be discussing later when we are going into the individual clauses. Now we'll go about the inland transit clauses. These inland transit clauses were drafted by the TAC, Tariff Advisory Committee, comprised of 10 clauses, and it is for rail and road movement, covers only pure material damage losses. However, there is a small change in ITC 2009 clauses. They are covering domestic air transit also. Domestic air transit also. Here also we have 6 version, 2009 and 83 versions. ITC A, B and C, 2009 and 83 versions. Then whatever coverage is provided by the above mentioned ITC and ITC clauses, we can be extending that by virtue of the Institute War clause, Institute Strike clause, and the SRCC clause. You will note that the Institute War clause and Institute Strikes clause is applicable to policies which are having the institute cargo clauses, and SRCC is for policies which is having the inland transit clauses. Other than that, we have the air cargo clauses and the institute trade clauses. Air cargo is having three types of clauses. Basic coverage is institute cargo clause air. Other than that, institute war clause air cargo and institute strikes clause air cargo. Other than that, we have various commodity clauses. We have not gone into depth about the various commodity clauses in this class. However, you just have to have an understanding of what are the perils covered and what is the time limits for the various commodity clauses. We'll just dive into the various clauses. For the sake of easier understanding, I start with the easiest clauses first, and then build upon those clauses with reference to those clauses. We'll start with the IPCC.
Others, please mute your mic, please.
Just a minute. ITCC. This is also known as the basic cover. ITC stands for Inland Transit Clauses. As mentioned earlier, 2009 is the latest version. We have the old version, 1983 version. If you want, you can go into the differences between the 83 and the 2009 version. ITCC is known as the basic cover. The risk that is covered is only fire and lightning. You just have an understanding of the word lightning here, because when we do later, we will find out a small interesting tidbit. So the only clause which we are covering is fire and lightning. Now exclusion we are going to see in ITCA, because it is better to learn the exclusion with the perspective of the all risk policies. So we'll just learn about the exclusions later. You just remember that the ITCC clause has the same exclusion as ITCA. The only exception here is that in addition to the ITCA exclusion, there is one extra exclusion, that is one malicious damage. So exclusion for ITCC is ITCA plus malicious damage. Just remember that. We will learn about the exclusion of ITCA later. Now we will learn about the duration clause. The duration starts when the cargo is first moved in the place of storage. So the cargo is first moved in the place of storage. So generally they used to give the example of once the cargo is moved and there is a carrying or conveyance waiting there to so that the cargo may be loaded onto it. At that time, for the moment of the cargo itself, the cover starts. Now this cover remains in effect throughout the ordinary course of transit. It remains in effect throughout the ordinary course of transit. The word ordinary course of transit has a special significance. It means that there should not be any untoward changes in the way the transit is carried and is taking place. So storage is covered only if it is the ordinary course of transit. Intentional storage by any means is not covered. Earlier we used to give intentional storage for up to 30 days or 60 days or 180 days even some cases. However, who are in this department, they know that in last year in April, I think, GIC has withdrawn coverage for intentional storage. So just remember, in all forms of marine policies, intentional storage is not covered. Or storage in ordinary course of transit is covered. and it is the coverage for ITC clauses is there for ordinary course of transit also. As far as the termination is concerned, the termination of the insurance will take place in 4 conditions. First one is delivery at the final destination. Delivery to the consignee at the final destination. Generally, we will consider after unloading. However, in ITC, there is no risks other than unloading, other than fire and lightning. And there is highly unlikely that there is any damage during unloading due to fire and lightning. So, you can just remember it as once the consignment reaches the final destination. Second is 7 days after reaching the final destination town, if it is by road. 7 days after reaching the final destination town, if it is by road. 7 days after reaching the railway station, final destination railway station, if it is by rail, and 7 days after unloading from aircraft at airport, 7 days after unloading from aircraft, if it is by air. You have to note that in ITC, only in 2009 clauses, air travel is covered. Okay, we'll move on. Now in ITC, named peril clause, always most questions in my opinion will come from the B perils, both ICC B and ITC B, because I don't know, they have that middle child syndrome, I don't know, but the most scope of questions, exam questions being asked is from ITC B courses, because they are named peril courses. So the risk is essentially ITC C. So whatever we have seen in ITC C, namely fire and lightning, plus breakage of bridges, collision with or by carrying vehicles, overturning of carrying vehicle, derailment. So you will notice something common about all these perils, only exclusively ITC-B perils. They are extraneously visible perils where both cargo and the vehicle are damaged simultaneously. So that is a peculiarity of the ITC-B perils. So you just remember ITC-C plus damage to vehicle and cargo simultaneously due to external causes. Now exclusion, it is same as ITC-A, but similar to ITC-C, malicious damage is also excluded. Malicious damage is also excluded. So duration is same as ITC-C. Termination is also same as ITC-C. So you need not study anything new as far as duration and termination is concerned for ITC-B. Now ITC-A. Now ITC-A is known as a all risk cover. It is a all risk cover other than exclusions. So we have to pay particular attention to the exclusions which are given in ITC-A. So just like we are paying attention to what is covered in ITC-B, we have to pay special attention to what is excluded in ITC-A. So we'll conduct of the assured, ordinary leakage, ordinary loss in weight or volume, ordinary wear and tear, insufficiency of packing, delay, inherent vice, they are there in the Marine Insurance Act itself, war and strike perils. Duration is same as ITC-C. Termination is same as ITC-C. However, unloading is covered. So termination is in ITC-A perils is only after unloading. So in case some damage happens during unloading, it is covered under ITC-A. However, termination in case of ITC-B and ITC-C also at the time of unloading only, but there is no scope for any of the perils happening, named perils which are covered under ITC-B and C happening during the unloading process. So when you are remembering this, termination of the ITC clauses, ITC-A clause is same as ITC-C, but unloading is also covered. That is only in the 2009 clauses, okay? The latest clauses. Now, we will move on to SRCC. Now, we had seen that in IC, the exclusions we studied in the ITCA, strikes was an exclusion. The strikes is comprised of many different perils. That strikes, in general, I mentioned it as an exclusion. So if we want to insert strikes into the coverage, then we do that by incorporating the SRCC clause. SRCC, if you want to know, it stands for strike, riot, and civil commotion. Strike, riot, and civil commotion. So it is attached to the inland transit clauses to cover the strike exclusion. The risk is loss or damage to the subject matter. Loss or damage to the subject matter by strikers, locked out workmen, labor disturbances, riots, civil commotion, terrorism, political and ideological motive. This last line, political, ideological, and religious motives, added recently in the 2009 clauses. It was not there in the old clauses. Now, exclusion is, some exclusions are delay, inherent vice, absence, shortage, withholding of neighbor, consequential or indirect losses of any kind. The duration clause is it's not ICC clause, it is ITC clauses. Except terrorism, which is not covered during storage. We have a termination of terrorism clause. So terrorism is covered under SRCC. Terrorism is covered under Institute Strikes clause. However, because of the addition of the termination of transit bracket terrorism clause, terrorism will not be covered when there is storage risk, whether it is intentional or unintentional in the ordinary course of transit or anything. So always remember, there is no terrorism cover when it is in storage risk. Only when it is in transit risk, terrorism cover is there. Termination is the same as ITC clauses. Just remember ITC clauses, except terrorism, which is not covered during storage. Notice that we cannot give war cover during inland transit. So when we are giving inland transit clauses, we are not giving war cover. The reason for that is, generally war cover always has a waterborne clause or an airborne clause. We will see that later. Whenever there is a waterborne clause or airborne clause, so for land transit, we will not have the ability to give what is this thing called war cover. Now we will move on to the ICC clauses, Institute Cargo clauses. I'm talking about the 2009 versions only. So we'll start with the ICC. It's a named peril clause, but as mentioned earlier in the principles section, the ICC B and ICC C wordings slightly modify the concept of proximate cause. So you will notice here that loss, risk covering is loss or damage to subject matter reasonably attributable to. The word reasonably attributable to is replacing generally used words caused by or approximately caused by. What this means is there is a relaxation of some sort for the insured as far as his burden of proving his loss. So some sort of relaxation is given to the insured for these kind of perils. Okay. So what are the perils? Fire or explosion, vessel or craft being stranded, grounded, sunk, or capsized. Now, we can just pay a little bit of attention to the various words which were mentioned in this point. Stranded. Stranded means when due to the lowering of the water level, sometimes what happens is, generally, whenever ships are traveling in the sea, part of the ship will be always below the level of seawater. Anybody who's familiar with the Archimedes principle and buoyancy knows that the amount of water that is displaced by the any object, the buoyant force acting on any object is the amount of water that is displaced by any object. So, whenever there is a loading onto the ship, what happens is the ship just sinks a little bit below the level of water. So, what that happens is, as the water level goes down during the lowering of tide, going back of tides, sometimes the lower portion known as the keel or bottom of the ship will get land on the seabed because of the lowering of the water level. That is known as stranding. Now, grounding is whenever the ship goes and hits and lands on the shore. That is known as grounding. Being sunk means when the ship sinks below the water level line, that is known as sinking. And capsizing means what happens is the ship will topple and the bottom of the ship will come up and the top of the ship will come down. So that is known as capsizing. So just pay attention. So if any of the these four things happen, and it is loss or damage can be reasonably attributed to these things, then it will be covered under ICCC. Now, overturning and derailment of land conveyance. Overturning and derailment of land conveyance. You will notice that overturning and derailment of land conveyance was covered under ITC B and not ITCC. Now, collision of the vessel, craft or land conveyance with any external object other than water. That is also covered under ICCB. Then discharge of cargo at port of distress. So if these things happen and the damage can be reasonably attributed to these things, then we can say that the same will be covered under the ICCC clauses. Now, slightly different wordings are used in respect to general average, sacrifice and jettison. Now, it mentions loss of the subject matter caused by. It is not reasonably attributed to, it is caused by. So, loss of the subject matter caused by general average, sacrifice and jettison. Now, you have to understand that there is a difference between general average sacrifice and general average expenditure. General average sacrifice means the cargo which is insured is damaged or lost because of the general average act, then that is known as general average sacrifice. For example, due to turbulent waters or turbulent seas, the crew decides to throw our insured cargo out of the vessel. That is known as jettison. Now that is a form of general average. There is a direct damage to our insured cargo. It is a general average sacrifice. Suppose there is a fire on board. So what happens is there is a some of the cargo has to be removed so that the fire does not spread. So while removing, it was damaged. So that will fall under general average sacrifice. However, there is another concept called general average expenditure. In general average expenditure, there is no direct damage to our insured cargo. However, there are some expenses that are incurred so that the journey is continued. So the general average expenditure is different from general average sacrifice. So just note that loss to the subject matter caused to by general average sacrifice and jettison is covered under ICCC. Now, general average and salvage charges to avoid from any loss other than the exclusions. So the point here is that there can be a general average declared. But if it is due to a cause which is not covered under ICCC, which are the named perils mentioned earlier, then that general average will not be paid. For example, piracy. Let us say some pirates capture the ship and they have to give some ransom. So, and the ship declares that general average and pays the ransom. The owner of the cargo has to pay his share of the general average, but our insurance policy will not pay that. So the point is, general average losses which are not caused by insured perils will not be payable under the policy. But general average sacrifice is always payable under the policy. Jettison is always payable under the policy. So general average expenditure is not payable if it is not due to an insured peril. Similarly, salvage charges also. Salvage charges are the amounts payable to salvers for recovering what is remaining of the salvage post the loss. That also is not payable in case there is a loss by any of the named perils. Then there is a concept called liability under both to blame collision clause under contract of affreightment. Now, what is the both to blame clause? What the both to blame clause states is that when there is a collision between two vessels and it is determined that both the vessels were negligent or both to blame. So both the vessel and the cargo interests are responsible. Of the both ships are responsible for each and every loss. So suppose there is a whatever cargo interest is there, which is insured by us, it will also has to pay a share for any liabilities for under the both to blame clause. So in such cases, in ICC perils, we can give the liability under both to blame clause. Now the exclusions is the same as ICCA clause. ICCA, we will learn about the ICCA clauses later, but two exceptions are there. Deliberate damage and piracy. Deliberate damage and piracy. These two exclusions are not there in ICCA, but they are there in ICCC. Duration we will be discussing about in ICCB clauses because it's fairly more convenient. So just remember, ICCC has the same duration as ICCB. Now we will move on to ICCB. Now ICCB is slightly wider coverage than ICCC. However, ICCB has some additional perils. It is a named peril policy, and unlike ICCA, the coverage is restricted compared to ICCA. Once again, we are seeing the words. All the perils which are covered under ICCC is covered under ICCB. In addition to that, there are some perils that we are discussing. Number one is reasonably attributed to earthquake, volcanic eruption, and lightning. So it is covered only under ICCB. I asked you to pay attention at the time of the wordings of ITCC. In ITCC, lightning is covered, but in ICCC, lightning is not covered. Lightning is covered only in ICCB. Now, next, loss or damage caused to the subject matter by washing overboard, entry of sea or lake or river water into the vessel, craft hold, container, conveyance, or place of storage. So if there is influx of water from water bodies then and it damages the cargo, then that is covered under ICCB. Then total loss of package, which is lost overboard or dropped while loading or unloading from the vessel or craft. So loading or unloading, only total loss of package of or container will be covered. So these are the 4 extra things that are there in the ICC B clause. Exclusions will be same as ICC A clause, similar to ICC C, deliberate damage and piracy will be excluded in addition to the ICC A exclusions. Duration, the duration of cover, this is the same duration for ICC C also. So just duration of cover will start from the time the cargo is first moved for immediate loading. First moved for immediate loading and continues in the ordinary course of transit and terminates when it terminates, whichever occurs first, on unloading from the carrying vessel, on unloading from the carrying vessel at the final destination. So once it is unloaded from the carrying vessel, it is the cover terminates. So if I'm asking you while unloading, if there is a damage, is it covered under ITCB perils, ICCB perils? What will be the answer? Answer will be it is not covered because unloading only from craft or vessel. Total loss of package from craft or vessel only is covered under ICCB. Next, next point of closure of termination of transit is on unloading from carrying vessel before the final destination. If it is used for storage other than ordinary course of transit, or it is used for allocation or distribution. So if before reaching the final destination, other than ordinary course of transit, there is any storage, the coverage will terminate. Next thing is, if it is used for, it is going for allocation. Allocation means it is going to a place other than the final destination, or it is going for distribution. Then it is not covered. The transit, then the coverage stops under termination of transit clause or duration clause. Now, if any other conveyance other than the ordinary course of transit is used, then the cover ceases or the cover terminates. Then on expiry of 60 days after the completion of discharge from an overseas vessel. So once the discharge from an overseas vessel takes place, then after that, only for 60, maximum of 60 days, the cover can exist. Don't confuse these 60 days for 60 days storage coverage. This is not related to storage coverage at all. Only storage during ordinary course of transit is covered. Intentional storage is not covered. So this 60 days.
Tobin, I have a doubt.
Yes,
With regard
yes,
to
sir.
that, with regard to that, unloading from carrying vessel, vehicle, on unloading from carrying vehicle at final destination.
Correct.
Under that ICCB, no, it after completing the water journey, if the consignment moves on a vehicle on road, then it is covered, no.
What is covered, sir?
On unloading from, it is still, it is no carried on the vehicle on road. It is also covered, isn't it?
Oh, it is covered, sir. It is covered.
Okay.
Number one, it is covered throughout. It is on warehouse to warehouse basis only. From the when it starts from the time the goods are loaded on to goods are moved for loading. goods are first moved for loading, and it ends when? Either it ends after 60 days of unloading from the vessel, ship, after 60 days, or when it reaches the final destination, or if it is used for storage other than ordinary course of transit, or if it is moved to any other form of vehicle other than ordinary course of transit.
So intermittent storage is covered.
Intermittent if it is in ordinary course of transit. So for example, I don't have enough place in my own warehouse. So what I will do, I will ask the port people to keep it there itself. That is not ordinary course of transit. So if it is intentional storage, that is not covered. Intermittent storage, if it is in there in the ordinary course of transit, it is covered. But there is no coverage for that we will see later in strikes clause, terrorism. Am I clear, sir?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Now we will move on to ICC A clauses. So ICC A clauses is all risk clauses. In all risk clauses, if you are already aware, you might be already aware, the burden of proof of proving that the cause is due to an excluded peril is on the insurer and not on the insured. Unlike ICC B and ICC C clauses, ICC B A is all risk. So we have to pay particular importance to the exclusions. What are the exclusions? Number one is a loss or damage or expenses attributable to willful misconduct of the assured. Willful misconduct of the assured. Leakage, loss in weight, volume, wear and tear. Next one is loss or damage or expenses caused by insufficiency or unsuitability of packing or preparing the subject matter when such packing is done by the insured or their employees. So if such packing is done by the insured or their employees, that's what I mentioned earlier. In case of containerized cargo, if it is on FCL basis, then if there is insufficiency of packing, then that claim will not be payable. However, if it is on LCL basis, that is less than full container load, then that claim will be payable. Now, this point is there, no? When it is done by the insured or their employees, that is added in the 2009 clause. Earlier, insufficiency of packing was considered as a blanket exclusion, and anything related to insufficiency of packing was not covered. Okay. Now, the next exclusion is loss or damage or expenses caused by inherent vice. Now, can somebody name a few examples of inherent vice?
Perishable, like
Perishable goods, maybe spontaneous combustion,
sugar,
rusting,
salt.
mold. So all these things are related to inherent vice. So that is an absolute exclusion under the ICC A, B, and C clauses. Then next is loss or damage or expenses caused by delay, even if it is caused by an insured risk. So even if delay is caused by an insured risk, insured peril, delay is not covered under the policy. It is the exclusion. Next is loss or damage or expenses caused by the insolvency or financial default of owners, managers, charterers, and operators of a vessel where the insured was aware of the where the insured was aware. In case the insured was not aware that there is a possibility of such a financial default or insolvency, then we are waiving this exclusion. We will pay the claim. This is a special relaxation that is given in the new clauses. This relaxation was not there in the old clauses, 82 clauses. It is only there in the 2009 clauses. Now, next, another point is if there is an innocent assignee like the banker or a buyer, Innocent assignees are also protected under this term. Innocent assignees are also protected under this term. Protected from this exclusion. Okay. Now next is indirectly loss or damage directly or indirectly caused by a weapon using atomic or nuclear energy or radioactive force or matter. Now there is a unseaworthiness of vessel if insured is aware. That if insured is aware is a newly added wordings in the 2009 clauses. Earlier we had talked about that implied warranty of seaworthiness of vessel. Here it is relaxed a little bit in the ICC CU clause, ICC International Institute Cargo clauses, latest version 2009 version. Now unfitness of container if loading is done by the assured or assured's employees and they are aware of that. So if the container is not fit, the first one was talking about the way of packing, of stowing into the container. Another, this is talking about the unfitness of the container. Suppose the container is not designed in a way to withstand the ordinary turbulence of the seas, then that will not be covered under this exclusion, unfitness of container. But if this is only applicable if the container was loaded by the assured, loading was done by the assured or their employees and they were aware of the unfitness of the container at that time. War and strikes are excluded under ICC. Similarly, it is excluded under ICC B and C also. So this is the exclusion we have to learn for everything. However, in addition to that, deliberate damage and piracy will be excluded under ICC B and C respectively. Then duration clause will be same as what we have studied for ICC B, just one slide prior. Now we'll move on to the institute war clauses. Now this institute war clauses was inserted to cover the war exclusion in the institute cargo clauses. So the risk covered is loss or damage to the subject matter by war, civil war, revolution, rebellion, insurrection or civil strife arising therefrom, hostile act by or against a belligerent power, capture, seizure, arrest, restraint, detainment arising from point mentioned above, derelict mines, torpedoes, bombs, or derelict weapons of war, general average and salvage charges to avoid the loss due to the risk covered, and duty of the assured charges incurred to avoid or minimize the loss or and recoveries. So essentially what we are saying is whatever is excluded under the war risks in ICC clauses, that is covered here. Other than that, if there is any general average due to those above mentioned perils, or if there is any salvage charges due to the above mentioned perils, that is also covered, and any duty of assured charges are there, that also is covered under the institute war clause. Exclusions will be similar to ICC clauses. In addition to the ICC clauses, there is one extra exclusion that is known as frustration of voyage. So whatever exclusions we are studying for ICC-A, with that we have to add ICC-C, with that we have to add frustration of voyage. Duration of the war cover is different from everybody. There is a concept called waterborne clause. It says that only when the cargo is on water, there will be coverage. Only if the cargo is on water, there will be coverage for war risk. So it should be on the vessel. But after loading onto the vessel, coverage will commence. If it is loaded off the vessel, coverage will end. Suppose there is transshipment. What do you do if there is transshipment? So what happens? When it is loaded, coverage will be there. When it is unloaded, coverage will not be there. When it is reloaded into another vessel, coverage will reattach. In case of transshipment. Another this thing is if termination. There is a termination clause. It says that if the vessel arrives at the destination and unloading is delayed, then the coverage is there for 15 days only. So that is the termination of the war risk. So with respect to war risk, I think this is sufficient. Ensure that you learn all the each and every individual components of the war risk, because I wrote the diploma paper recently. What they did was they mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4. They mentioned the different perils related to war risk, and then they asked only 1 and 2 is covered, 1, 2 and 3 is covered, 1, 2, 3 and 4 is covered. So that becomes difficult. So what I recommend is you learn at least read each and every peril that is covered under war risk carefully before moving on. Now, institute strikes clause is there. We are institute strikes clause is inserted to cover the strikes exclusion risk of the cargo clauses. So risk covered is loss or damage to the subject matter by strikers, locked out workmen, labor disturbances, riots, civil commotion, terrorism, political, ideological, and religious motive. This political, ideological, and religious motives were added recently. And exclusions is same as ICC clauses. One extra exclusion is there: absence, shortage, or withholding of labor. Losses due to absence, shortage, or withholding of labor is a special exclusion under institute strikes clauses. And like in war clauses, frustration of wage. That also is not covered under institute strikes clause. Duration is same as ICC clauses except terrorism. There is a terrorism cover here in institute strikes clause, but there is no terrorism coverage in storage risks, even if it is incident. So there is a termination of transit storage, a termination of transit terrorism cover. So if there is any storage, the terrorism cover will stop. Once the transit recommences, terrorism cover will start again. So other than terrorism, everything else is same. Then termination. It is the same as ICC clauses except terrorism, which is not covered during storage. So terrorism coverage will stop even if it is due to intermediate storage. So be careful about it. Now we'll move on to the ICC air clauses. Air clauses is inserted to cover air cargo, and the risk is similar to ICCA, but there is no coverage for GA, salvage, and both to blame collision liability. If you think about it, there is no concept of GA, salvage, and both to blame in air transport. That's why it is not there. Exclusions are same as ICCA. Duration is same as duration is same as ICCA clauses. Termination is same as ICCA clauses, except there we have 60 days limit from the time of discharge of vessel. Here we have 30 days limit after unloading from aircraft. Then we will move on to the institute war clauses air cargo. It is inserted to cover war risk for air cargo. Now risk is same as institute war clauses for sea, but there is no coverage for GA, salvage, and both to blame collision liability. Exclusion is same as war clauses. Duration is same as war clauses. Termination is same as war clauses, but 15 days time limit after the arrival of aircraft at destination. So here the number of days is same as war clauses, but there it was delayed. The vessel is arriving at the port. Here aircraft is arriving at the airport. Now we are moving on to institute strikes clauses air cargo. Risk is same as for strikes clause, but there is no coverage for GA, salvage, and both to blame collision liability. So once we are learning the strikes clause, it is easy to learn the institute air cargo strike clause. Duration is same as strike clause. Termination is same as strikes clause, but 30 days after the arrival of aircraft at destination airport. So there in normal cargo strikes clauses, we had 60 days. Here we have only 30 days. In ICC, air cargo clause is also 30 days. Okay, similar to that. Now, just a small, what do you call it? Summary of the various time limits of various clauses. You can go through it at your leisure. In addition to this, I would recommend that you go through the commodity clauses. What is the risk covered? What is the subject matter insured? In addition to the time limits, that will give an overall picture of what is the various commodity clauses. Due to paucity of time, we are not stepping into the commodity clauses. Now, types of marine cargo policies. There are different types of marine cargo policies. We'll be discussing a few of them, not everyone, and a few of them have already been mentioned in passing earlier. A specific policy is a specific policy. Isolated shipments will be covered, and individual sum insured will be there. Individual policy will be there. Individual premium collection will be there. There is no concept of declaration, just proposal and intimations and issuance of policy. Then we have an open policy. In an open policy, we have this agreement of some sort, but it is in the form of a policy. All shipments are covered in a single policy. Insured has to give the declarations for this shipments. This is a what do you call policy. It has a separate sum insured. As and when the shipments go, the sum insured will keep on decreasing. There is an option to replenish the sum insured at any time. Generally, it is used for inland transit only. Policy will cease at the date of end date or the exhaustion of the sum insured. Then we have to mention the per bottom limit and the per location limit. Per bottom limit is the maximum liability of the insurer for each and every consignment. And then rate and premium are decided earlier, and we have a right to examine the insured's records, and we have it is subject to a 30 days notice of cancellation. Open cover, unlike a open policy, is not a policy per se. It's not a standard document. It's an agreement of sorts. Based on that agreement, we will issue individual policies. We have agreed to cover each and every shipment of the insured, and the insured has agreed to declare each and every shipment to us. Then individual policies issued each and every time. Premium is collected individually each and every time. It is used generally for overseas exports and imports. So that's all with relation to open cover. Then we have a special type of policy called an annual turnover policy. Unlike open policy and open cover, where premium and sum insured and everything is charged based on each and every consignment. Annual turnover policy, we are charging the premium on the annual sales turnover of the insured. Yes. So annual sales turnover of the insured. So whatever is the annual sales turnover of the insured, on that we will be charging a premium rate, and it is held to cover that wherever the insured has an insurable interest, be it raw material purchases, be it sales of goods, be it inter-depot transports, whatever it is, wherever the insured has insurable interest, that we will be covering under the annual turnover policy. However, the annual turnover policy is subject to this Incoterms. Incoterms will always supersede whatever, even if we are giving warehouse to warehouse cover, open policies and annual turnover policies and open cover, Incoterms will always supersede this. Then type of marine cargo claims. We have a total loss. There are two types of total loss. There is an actual total loss and a constructive total loss. Actual total loss means the physical loss of the cargo. The cargo is irretrievably lost physically. We cannot get hold of the cargo physically. That is known as actual total loss. Constructive total loss is, it is the sense of commercial total loss. We have not lost the cargo totally. However, if we are going to retrieve the cargo, if we are going to repair the cargo, if we are going to work on the cargo to get back the cargo in its original state, it will cost us more than the value of the cargo. That is known as a constructive total loss. The difference between actual total loss and a constructive total loss is, actual total loss is the physical loss of the cargo. So physical total loss of the cargo, it is irretrievably lost. Constructive total loss is a commercial total loss. We have to expend more money. It need not be lost physically, but to recover the cargo or repair the cargo, we have to expend more money. Then we have particular average or partial loss claims. So in particular average, what generally we are doing is we will be using one formula. If you want, you can take down that formula. It is gross sound value minus damaged value divided by gross sound value multiplied by sum insured. This is the formula which we are using in case of partial loss claims. It is mentioned in the Marine Insurance Act also. It is gross sound value.
Can you, yeah, please repeat it.
It is gross sound value minus damaged value whole divided by gross sound value multiplied by sum insured.